Good morning, viewers. Today I'm going to upload my matter on the poetry section from the reader Flamingo. And I begin with the first poem, that is My Mother at 66. This poem seems to be a very heart-touching poem. It is a poignant account. Poignant means a very sad, very touching account written by the poet on a relationship with her mother. She had a very strong bonding with her mother, and with the passage of time, as the mother grows older, the poet is gripped with anxiety and fear of losing her. In her childhood, it was a temporary, temporarily being away from her, but now at this stage, it would be a permanent loss because she would be separated from her through death. So we begin with the poem. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me. So she had gone to her parents' home that was in Cochin, and after meeting them, she was coming back and she was driving, and it was on a Friday morning, and her mother accompanied her and was sitting beside her in the car. And the mother seemed to be taking a nap. She dozed open mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. So when she noticed her mother sitting beside her, the mother seemed to have gone off to sleep or was taking a nap, and she was sleeping with the mouth open and seemed to be very lifeless, oblivious of her surroundings. Oblivious means unaware of her surroundings. Like she just dozed off when she sat in the car and the poet was driving. Ashen like that of a corpse. Here we come across the first figure of speech used by the poet, and that is a simile, as we have the word like, which is comparing the mother to a dead body or to a corpse. There is another figure of speech used here, and that is ashen face. Ashen. Ashen is like ash. Ash is lifeless. It has no color. The rosiness on her face was not there. That is why the poet has compared her face to ash. Ashen, pale, colorless. So that is another figure of speech which is a metaphor. And realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. There was a nagging pain in the poet's heart, and she felt it as she used to feel it in her childhood, that she would lose her mother. And now looking at her, she was absolutely convinced that this loss was going to be inevitable, and that pain nagged her as she looked, but soon put that thought away. Which thought? The thought of being separated from her mother permanently. The thought of losing her mother to death permanently. So the thought was very painful, very hurting, and she did not want to think about it anymore. So what did she do? She put that thought away. That means she diverted her mind, and she looked out of the window. And she looked out at the young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. Now the thought that she wanted to divert, it changed when she looked out of the window, because she sees young trees and sprinting merry children. Now the poet has used the word young trees and has used merry children, happy children, enthusiastic children, having a lot of energy, vigor, vitality in them, as a contrast to highlight the mother's old age, her inactiveness, her dullness, and how she was just lying there, without any kind of movement or without any kind of action. Now here again, we have a figure of speech used by the poet. The tree sprinting. Sprinting, we use the word, you must have heard the word sprinters, that are racers who race. So tree sprinting means while she was driving, the trees appeared to be racing backwards, moving at a great speed. So tree sprinting. Now, since it's a human trait, racers racing, So we can call it a personification. The trees printing a personification. The other figure of speech that is used here is for both the trees printing and the merry children spilling. It's a metaphor because these words are trying to bring out the vigor, the vitality, the energy, the enthusiasm, the liveliness of the children and the young trees. Spilling out of their homes, spilling. Spilling we usually use with liquids. You pour something into a glass, a tumbler or a cup, and if you don't stop, it spills. And it spills with great speed. So flowing out, bubbling with life. That was the kind of imagery created. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her worn, pale face as a late winter's moon. Now they reach the airport, she goes through her security check, and then once again she looks at her mother. And what does she notice? There's no improvement, of course, and she notices and she describes it further as a worn, pale face. Worn. Worn is colorless. Colorless means pale, lifeless kind of a thing. And late winter's moon. Now here I would just like to tell you that life, if we see, we can divide it into the various phases of life that we have, like childhood, youth, that is spring, when you're in full movement, when you're all very peppy, happy, and you have a lot of energy, vitality. Then as you grow, you mature, that comes your summer. Then as you move on and step into old age, that is autumn. And finally, winter is associated with death. So she compares her mother to the worn, the pale, lifeless looking moon, lusterless moon, and felt that old familiar ache once again. So I've told you it was winter's moon, means in symbolizing death. And during winters, when we look at the moon, it's not very bright and very clear, because in winters we have mist, we have fog. So it blocks out its light and it looks very hazy. And that is why it doesn't look so bright and shining. And felt that old familiar ache, my childhood fear. But all I said was, see you soon, Amma. All I did was smile and smile and smile. So we have a simile in the worn pale face as a late winter's moon. That's a simile. And the moon has been used as a symbol of death. Now, the poet, on leaving, on bidding adieu or bidding farewell to her mother, doesn't say much. Maybe she's choked by emotions, or maybe she doesn't want to convey her own anxiety to her mother, because the mother would feel even more depressed or even more hurt about the fact, or the mother would also feel that separation from her daughter, because it was a mutual bonding. So naturally it was painful for the mother also to separate from her daughter, especially in her old age. So she didn't say much, and maybe in her heart of hearts she had that feeling that of guilt also, of leaving her mother behind, because she had her own commitments and she had to go. She had to leave her out of compulsion. So what did she do? She only smiled and smiled and smiled. So we see another figure of speech being used by the poet, and that is repetition. Repetition of the word smile conveys that there were no words directly, but she had an elongated smile, and that smile was a smile of assurance to her mother that everything would be fine. And that smile hid her guilt, hid her own anxiety, which she did not want to convey to her mother. So she only smiled and said, see you soon. That means she wanted to convey to her mother, all will be well and we will be meeting soon. Well, I would like to repeat for you once again the figures of speech that are used here. Ashen face is a metaphor for a lifeless face. It continues with face ashen like that of a corpse, that is a simile. Then we have trees printing, which is a personification and also a metaphor. And the merry children spilling is also metaphorically used. Then we come on to her worn pale face like that of a winter's moon. So it is a simile and the moon has been used as a symbol. And then further on we have smile and smile, which is a repetition. Okay. Now if we come across to the theme of the poem, the poet is highlighting the fact of aging and death, which are inevitable. Anybody who's born goes through the process of growing up, then decaying, and finally dying. It is inescapable. You cannot escape death. It is imminent. And another thought which must have crossed her mind as she was looking at her old mother was, she realized, of course, that the mother was actually very, very old. Simultaneously, she must have related it to herself also, that she was also growing up. She was also catching up on age. And very soon, she would also have to face this harsh reality. I hope you understood the poem, and I would continue with a few question and answers for you, so that you're able to understand the text better. Okay, the first question, where was the poet coming from? Where was she going? Simple, she was coming from her parents' home in Cochin and she was going to the airport. Where was the poet's mother? The poet's mother was sitting beside her in the car. She had accompanied her to the airport. How does the poet describe her mother? The poet describes her mother as being old and pale. And she was inactive, dull. Her face it did not have the rosiness or the luster that one usually has in youth. And it seemed as if, she was almost in the last phase of life and had lost all fervor of life. The next question, what thought did she try to drive away? Now, when she looked at her old mother dozing like that and that nagging pain pricked her, then at that moment she must have been moved to tears, and maybe she had a lump in her throat and she was choking, and that fear of separation really made her face harsh reality. And so she wanted to put that terrible, unpleasant, hurting thought away. So she looked out at the window to divert her mind, to put that thought away. Next question. What did the poet see from the window of the car? The poet saw young trees printing and merry children spilling out of their homes. So young trees sprinting, as I told, why were the trees sprinting? It seemed as if they were sprinting or they were moving at a great pace or racing, because she was driving at a fast speed and the trees seemed to be racing in the opposite direction. And the merry children, merry means happy, full of life, full of joy, bubbling with life. And they were all coming out because playtime is the happiest time for children. So they were rushing out of their houses. So the effect of haste and quickness has been brought out by the word spilling. They were spilling out of their houses to play. What do the images of young trees and merry children symbolize? They symbolize the spring of life, the youth of life, its strength, its vigor, and the happiness, which definitely contrasts with the lifelessness and helplessness of the old aging mother. The next question. Where was the poet standing? She was standing at the Cochin airport to board the plane after the security check. The next question. Why does the narrator or the poet look at her again? The narrator looked at the mother again for the last time before boarding the plane because she wanted to reassure herself about the well-being of her mother, because she was leaving her at that stage where nobody could tell whether the next time when she came home she would be able to meet her mother or no. So to reassure herself, to look at the mother again, once again, and also maybe to give the mother a very, very calm feeling that all was well and nothing was wrong, and she would be coming back very soon to meet her. So one last time she looked at her to wish her goodbye. Now, next question. To explain, worn pale as a late winter's moon. Now, it is a simile, as I've told you, and the mother's old, wrinkled, withered, lifeless face has been compared with the winter's moon. As I told you, the winter moon loses its luster, its shine due to the fog and the mist in that weather. So the mother's face also looked very, very pale. It had lost its radiance, it had lost its glow and seemed to be misted with age. And winter symbolizes death. And the waning moon, moon has its phases. You have a full moon, then it begins to decrease, till sometimes you just see a crescent, just that little, half line kind of a thing. So the waning moon symbolizes decay. The next question. What familiar ache did the poet feel? Now, familiar means something that she was used to, something that she had experienced before. So the familiar ache refers to the poet's painful realization, which she had in her childhood also, of being separated from her mother, of losing her mother, her helplessness at this thought. So the thought once again comes back. And this is something very natural. You must go back to your nursery class days when your mother or father used to come and leave you, to go to class, and how you used to wail and cry and feel miserable without having them around. That sense of security, that sense of happiness. So the same thing was experienced by the poet also. The fear of separation came back, and this time it was actually fearful because she would lose her permanently in death. The next question. Did the poet share her thoughts with her mother? No. The poet did not share her thoughts with her mother because she did not want to convey any kind of anxiety to the mother. As it is, she was old, so the best thing for old people is to be, dealt with very happily, very calmly, patiently, assuring them that all is well. Because it was not only for the poet being separated, it was painful for the mother also to be separated from the daughter. So she did not want to share any kind of anxious or emotional thoughts with the mother. In fact, she bid adieu on a very positive note of seeing her again. The next question. Why did the poet only smile? The poet only smiled. Maybe she did not know how to express herself, or maybe she was trying to hide her own anxiety and guilt, or she was choked about the unknown fear that was there. And also she wanted to reassure her mother by bidding her a cheerful farewell, leaving on or parting on a positive note. The other question is, what do the parting words of the poet signify? It's quite similar to the smile only. As I told you, there was a lot of dilemma and confusion in the mind of the poet about being able to see her mother again or not. So, and she did not want to convey this anxiety to her mother, so it was only smile and smile and smile. There were no parting words except the positive note of saying, see you soon. Now, the smile that the poet gave is actually ironical, because she smiled and she wanted it to be a positive note, but heart of hearts she knew that the mother was old and that she would be separated from her. The next is bring out the significance of the title, My Mother at 66. Now, you all know that once you cross the age of 60, the people are put into the bracket of the senior citizens. So they are more vulnerable at that time to death. I mean, of course, death has no age, for it. But then, naturally, when you begin to grow older, the fear and anxiety is always there. And especially for children, to lose out on their parents, to lose out on that security. So the title is very, very significant. And she wants to convey to the readers that the bonding between the mother and the daughter, or bonding between parents and children, should be strong. And we must try to make them happy and try to give them all the joys in the world. And at this age, old age, the parents are very, very vulnerable, and they're susceptible to frail health, old age, and they have their own anxieties and fears to live with, which children should actually lift them out from and give them that loving and caring and concerned attitude, so that they actually live life to the fullest right till the end. Thank you for watching.